All right. Well, welcome to Always on the Hunt, and thank you for joining us for our very first episode. So for our first episode, we want to introduce ourselves for a little bit, and then we'll discuss how the recruiting industry is broken. Yep. We're going to discuss all the things that are wrong about the recruiting industry and how we are working hard to fix this much needed but very flawed industry, one client and one placement at a time. So with that being said, let me introduce and bring in my colleague at Birddog Talent, Bayley Aarons. Bayley, welcome to Always on the Hunt.
Hi, Leo. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, and definitely wanted to, have you on our first episode so people get a chance to meet you. So Bayley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, it's just first thing, born, raised in New York, big East Coast guy, made it over to where you are in Cleveland, Ohio. Went to Miami University. For all my East Coast guys, that is in Ohio, not in Florida. There's one there too.
Right. Not the Canes.
Not the same school, but I know the.
It's a great school.
No, it is. I just know over where I'm from, the confusion happens all the time. So I just wanted to clear that up right off the bat.
What's that saying? Yeah, what's that saying that Miami University is older than the state of Florida or something?
Oh, yeah.
My university was a university before Florida became a state.
Whatever land Florida belonged to.
Right.
Like whatever country it belonged to. Like we were a university before it was even like part of U.S. land. Like I forget what the exact saying was, but that was the crux of it. So from there, from New York, that's where I'm at right now, remotely doing this podcast. I'm excited to be here for. But so it caught me in the old room. But in Cleveland now. After I graduated and the pandemic wrapped up, ended up moving back down towards Ohio, towards Cleveland. Had made a bunch of great connections at university. So, wanted to come back down, be close to them. My girlfriend was down here. So, just pretty much was also, to be honest, much more financially realistic for a young early 20s guy to just, get a one bed, one bath in downtown Cleveland than it is in downtown Tribeca. Right. So
absolutely.
So it was pretty easy there, pretty easy decision to make for me there. So and then, other than that, just work-wise after university, had a couple of, those entry level, those jobs everyone kind of does when they first get out. Obviously, the pandemic didn't help, kind of threw a wrench in that. So ended up just, after a little bit of searching, realizing I wanted to be in a relationship-driven role, found this opportunity and, just got into the recruiting industry and have never looked back.
Well, great. Well, we're definitely excited to have you. And, by extension of joining me about a year ago, that means you joined the AV industry a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me what your thoughts are on your first year in the AV industry.
Oh, well, I mean, I love it. Just with my upbringing, like I was always kind of like, I wouldn't say like a nerdy guy, but a techie guy. I love to always like have my hands on gadgets and like tinkering and stuff. I always love to like be messing around with like, speakers, the projectors. I always love those kind of products. Like
all the fun toys, right?
Yeah. The toys. Exactly. And so I always like had an interest in that. And as I've more really been in it for over a year now, I guess what's really kind of stood out to me the most, is more just like how much people don't realize AV is everywhere. Like what we're doing right now, like I'm talking to you, I'm like my camera right there. You've got your headphones on, the mic.
All of it.
AV's everywhere. You walk out
everywhere.
I walk down like the street over here, like all the LED signs, like the digital signage, the kiosks, whatever, like the control of getting everything around. Like I definitely didn't realize how much it's just everywhere. That a lot of
And I remember like when we landed in Vegas for Infocom and pointed out the LED wall, right? That was one of our clients, and you're like, that's pretty awesome. It's cool.
Yeah, when I was driving back, when I was making my drive to here in this morning, when we were driving down 27, there's two giant DV LED walls that are right there. That took me a second to realize, like, oh yeah, that's AV. That's digital signage right there. Yeah.
Yep. So tell me, what would you say were some of your highlights from your first year?
It's a great question. Well, I mean, obviously, kind of like the gimme one right there is just, my first placement was definitely like a highlight.
Everyone remembers their first, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was always fun. Just, really getting started with stuff like that felt great. So, that was a highlight. Other than that, Infocom was it was great. To just, actually for the first, my first half of the year I was here, kind of just really interacted with the AV industry as a bunch of like source lists that we were going through and talking to people through phones and like kind of stalking on LinkedIn. So it was great to be, in the room with everybody,
So it's always great to put a face to the name, right?
And
just
also
voice.
seeing like, the energy of the industry of that room, just all the hustle and bustle of it, like all the activity that was going on. It was really good to see. It was inspiring to see. Other than that, just, I can think about like my first placement. There's like, I'm not going to obviously like drop like, name drop who they were, but like there was this one candidate we had who, I had to really track down, get a hold of. They were a perfect candidate for the role though. And it was just, really feeling like chasing them down, helping them through the process, really getting them ready and then getting them hired in that role and seeing them happy after when I checked in with them. Like that was great. Also, it's still kind of early days, but when I sort of like helped you out with bringing that one new client in that
absolutely. That was awesome.
That was a great thing. So it's just, it's definitely been a great first year. Just excited to, compound on that and have an even better second one. Right?
It should be a great 2025. So let me ask you, as you mentioned, you graduated college, you did some entry level jobs and so forth like that. Tell me, how did you decide to become a recruiter?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said earlier, I did realize I wanted to, and well, let me back up a little bit, but more towards just the roles I was doing entry level, they were entry level jobs, they weren't the best, they're entry level jobs.
Typical out of college, you got to build your career, right?
Exactly. Sit in this like, intake room or whatever, like do these intakes, very basic, entry level stuff. And then I know I spoke on it very briefly, didn't really touch into it when I, during the pandemic, dipped my feet into the tech world a little bit, started developing. So I like creating stuff so much. That's where I really understood kind of what situation would suit me best. And just unfortunately, like sitting in a, like we said, room for 8 hours coding just wasn't for me. Definitely realized
you are way too extroverted to be sitting in a cubicle typing all day.
Yeah. I wanted to be in a much more relationship driven kind of role, where I was talking to people, like forming relationships, doing things to help them besides just, figuring out the filter function on a search bar for a website like 20 people are going to use. So when I was realizing that I wanted to be in one of those more relationship driven roles, I was thinking, so then it's like, all right, I have two minds. One, you're either going to go into sales or you're going to go into recruiting. That's just what I thought of. Like, that's what I saw. That was what makes the most sense to A or B. You get to do what you want to do, like in the sense of like, being relationship driven, but it's going to be what are you really working with? Like what's the industry you want to work in?
Right.
What do you want to do? And I just more realized, truthfully too, I went through a career lull where I got laid off during the pandemic, and it took me about almost a year to find a new role.
Right.
And that's, it's a hard thing to do, especially if you're young and like you've only got, a couple years of entry level stuff. It's scary. So I'm more kind of really.
And by the way, I think you going through that process for that year has really helped you. That where you're able to connect with the candidates. And
that's what I was going to get to.
You're empathetic. You're empathetic towards them. So I
can really relate to when I talk to someone and they say, "Hey, man, I just really want to get back to work. Like I'm a good worker. The opportunities aren't there. I can't find them." I really relate to that, and I can empathize and sympathize. And I'm passionate about helping people out of those situations.
Right. So when you were interviewing, what made you choose Birddog over the other recruiting firms? Yeah,
because I did. Once I made that decision, I wanted to get into recruiting. Definitely, was interviewing around, saw some places. What I liked about Birddog more was just how much more, like I said earlier, like going back to all it's relationship driven, right? Some of those other places you go to, not there's anything wrong with it. I'm not trying to
No, we're not going to.
It's a little boiler roomy, Hey, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to call 1,000 people, get 100 resumes, 10 interviews, 1 hire.
Right.
It's like, that's the method, and make our placement.
A lot more transactional, right?
Yeah, it's transactional, collect your commission check. And then if you guys want to work again, hey, great, but whatever. We're just going to keep it moving. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes that's actually suited for certain places. Sometimes there's a situation for everything. Right. But I more found I wanted to be in a situation where we could really work with the clients that we work with, like build relationships, not just with the candidates, but with them, our clients, and, really help. Like I was, one, liking the clients that we work with and knowing that when I call a candidate, knowing, hey, I've got a great opportunity for you. And it's because we have these relationships that I can be confident when I'm saying that. So that's what I liked about Birddog. I liked that if we felt more like we were partnered with our clients, really trying to find a solution for their hiring instead of just being this like transactional instrument that people.
I'm definitely glad you picked up on that for sure. Yeah. All right. Good deal. So
I mean, Leo, like you've been, let me think for a bit, because I'm interested in asking you this question. Tell me, one, before we get into anything, like for our audience, right? Like, tell me a little bit more about you for anyone who might not be in the industry, because it feels like everyone in the industry. Like, having you walk around Infocom, everyone was stopping you. So for people who don't know, which I can't imagine, or for people who aren't in the industry, and for our listeners, like tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how'd you?
Well, it's funny because I hear that all the time. From people. It's like, oh yeah, I know everybody in the industry, right? And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, trust me. Like, I know a lot of people, and I feel like I'm very well connected, and I probably know only about 10% of the industry. We're constantly, meeting new people and reaching out to new candidates all the time. And to say that I know everyone, but yes, we do know a lot of people, and so forth like that. But, so what can I say? I got.
How did you get into recruiting?
Well, it's a interesting story. I've been in AV my whole life, right? Started an AV integration company about 25 years ago. Yeah. Name of the company is called Smile Inc. We were an AV integrator, mostly residential, did some commercial. We did well. We were a CE Pro top 100 dealer, even top 50, most years, which is a pretty big accomplishment coming from Cleveland, Ohio, right? We didn't get the luxury of having some affluent markets like Florida and California and New York have. So we did really well. We won a bunch of national awards, like a CEA, the Consumer Electronics Association Mark of Excellence Award. We won the Weatherhead 100 Award here in Cleveland, which was, we were number one fastest growing company, Northeast Ohio, which was a great honor. So we had a great run, and then after selling my company, I ended up, looking for my next challenge and reached out to a couple of people I knew who were recruiters, and ended up here.
Yeah. Do you think that industry background helped you when you were getting started? Or?
Yeah. That's it's probably the biggest value that I bring to the table, is my industry expertise, right? So when I'm talking to a candidate, I could, gain instant credibility, and establish rapport because I understand the industry. I know the technology. I know the people. I know the competition, the how it all lays out, in industry wise. And so I can have those deeper conversations with them, and be able to talk to them about, how this would benefit their career and go from there.
Okay.
For sure.
And aside from getting into recruiting, right? Like what made you decide to even start Birddog in the first place? Right? Sure.
Right. As I mentioned, I reached out to a couple people I knew who were recruiters, and so at the time it was actually funny because I wasn't even thinking about becoming a recruiter. I reached out to them. I was thinking all right, maybe they have something for me. Let me go find my next challenge, maybe something outside the industry even. And so they're like, yeah, come on in, let's talk. And I went in there fully thinking that I was going to talk to them about their opportunities. And then they're like, hey, have you ever thought about recruiting? And I'm like, no, never. Why would I? And they're like, well, here's the opportunity. And they kind of explained it to me. It sounded interesting, fun, entrepreneurial, it allowed me to stay in this industry, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we gave it a go and did that for a bunch of years, and they're good people, great, good firm. They they do good work, but, I just thought that the recruiting, especially, they were mainly contingency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the way contingency works, I just thought that contingency recruiting is totally broken.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So, I mean, let's get into that a little bit. Like, how's it broken? Can you explain it?
Yeah. So as we said, the entire recruiting industry is broken. It's expensive. The fee structure is expensive. The way recruiters are incentivized is not aligned with the clients. It's too reactive, right? By the time you hire recruiters, too late.
Yeah.
So I always
say it's like, going to your general practitioner rather than like taking a trip to the emergency room, right? Like, and exactly. what's going to be more expensive, a trip to the ER or just, going to do your checkup, right?
Right. So, I just believe that there was a better way, to establish a recruiter client relationship that was more effective and long-term mutually beneficial. So that's why I started Birddog Talent.
Okay. All right. So let's get into that a little bit. Like, let's take these one at a time. Like the first thing you said was like the fees, right? And I totally agree with you. So like one, just because for people who might not know, like not in industry and like they have no idea what we're talking about. Like break that down. How is it like one, like realistically, like what could even some of these like billings be? Like how expensive could it get?
Yeah. Like, okay. So let's start with the fees. It's probably the number one reason why companies don't use recruiters. It's expensive. There's no way around it. The fees can range anywhere from 20% all the way up to 30. I've heard as high as 35%. And the percentages of the candidate's base salary. Yeah. If you have a candidate with $100,000 salary, and then you're paying out, let's just even say 25%, $25,000 placement fee, right? So that's one of the big reasons why people, it's prohibitive, and I get it. Look, as a recruiter, I think it's worth it. I definitely think that working with a recruiter is better than not working with a recruiter. Sure. But again, like we just felt that we could do it differently and with a better way.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we spoke about this ways back, but like just from what you're saying, it's about that when you do a contingency, it's transactional, right? Like I can even tell that, but break that down for our listeners, like how like.
Yeah. So the transactional nature, and here's the issue with it is because clients view recruiters as a last resort, we got to stop bleeding, right? Only when they really need them. And it's not like where you work with them day in and day out. Right. So we, thinking back to when I was doing contingency, every year I would lose one of my top clients and it was over the fee structure. Right. And it sucked because, I would do really good work. We would bill out and we'd do well. And then we were the victims of our own success because we billed them out for $100,000, $200,000. And then the CFO would step in and be like, who is this company? Why are we spending so much money with them? We got to cut back on our recruiting fees. So every year, no matter, even though I did well and I was trying to build a relationship and I would make, I'd fill their needs and stuff like that, I would end up having to lose them because the CFO would step in and tell them to cut back on their recruiting fees. So like, well, in terms of, since we're the solution, like how can we help them with that? How can we kind of mitigate those giant, checks they have to cut for us essentially, right? Right. So what we did is we created an affordable, budget-friendly monthly subscription model. And what that does is it break, instead of having these large percentage contingency fees, our clients pay us a small monthly subscription fee. And then a small placement fee when we do make placements, which has worked out great. We have clients right now that are saving 70% plus, what they would have paid if they would have paid, via the contingency model. Yeah. And like how, because the first person, like coming up, not the first person, but like the new person who's not in the industry, they're going to hear that and they're going to be like, well, how is that sustainable? Right. Like, how are you not charging how are you charging 30% of what the other guys do and can still, keep. Yeah. Well, again, so look, the contingency recruiting model, right? It doesn't, there's no fee, there's no obligation, there's no investment until a placement's made, right?
Yeah.
So companies can sign on with a contingent recruiter with zero obligation up front. And look, and we'll do it, if a client really,
we'll do it.
Yeah, look, if a client insists that they don't want to, they would rather do contingency over subscription, okay, fine. We have a better way for them, but if this is what they prefer to do, then that's fine. And then, so it costs them nothing to get started, right? So they're not really fully invested. And on the flip side, the recruiter isn't obligated for anything because they haven't collected any money, right? So there's no accountability for the recruiter either. Yeah. And all this leads to bad clients who aren't really invested into their searches, and they'll send recruiters on wild goose chases like, hey, go find us that purple unicorn, squirrel, whatever. Or they'll stop searches because, the recruiter's time doesn't matter. And then recruiters will also be like, hey, I got a better search over here, or they'll pay me a higher commission or easier to fill. So they'll go work on that. And then then they'll ignore their client. So there's just a lot of time that's being wasted.
Especially.
Right. So with our model, 100% of our time is being paid for. Like in contingency recruiting, if you close 30% of your searches, you're doing really, really well.
I mean, that's great. I mean, baseball batting 350 gets you in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Well, I would even batting 300, right? So as a recruiter, that's where a lot of the contingency recruiters aim for is to close 30%, which means 70% of their time, 70% of the searches that they're working on, they're not getting paid on. So what they do is they have to charge the higher fees to subsidize that 70% of the time, meaning the 30% of the good clients are paying for the 70% of the bad clients. So on the flip side, with our model, we have, our subscription clients, which means that all of our time is being paid for. They're invested, we're accountable, and it leads to a much more successful relationship, a lot more placements being made, faster, more efficient, more effective. And also, we can reduce our costs because we don't need our good clients to subsidize our wasted time.
Okay. Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. Everyone's committed. We all share in the benefits.
Correct.
We go into partnership. So, okay, that makes sense. Like with the wasted time. So you also said something else I wanted to dig into.
Sure.
We talked about the time, but the incentive though, right? Recruiters have, and they're on the contingency model. The incentive is just busted. Right. Get more into that for me.
So think about it. Like you are being paid a percentage, right, of the placement fee that your fees a percentage base. So you are being paid that percentage. So you're instantly motivated to increase the salaries, right?
Yeah.
So your motivation, you're going to go work on searches that pay more, right? You're going to, instead of working on maybe a technician search, you're going to be working on the VP of sales search because you know that there's a bigger payday out there, right? So certain clients are not going to get the attention that they're expecting and hoping for. But then on top of that, now all of a sudden you have a candidate, you get into offer stage. And you're like, all right, I'm going to, that the candidate will accept their offer, but there's recruiters that go back and then they'll negotiate a higher salary for the candidate, even though the client's paying for them. So they are negotiating against the client that's paying them. To increase their commissions, and it's very self-serving. And it's a very dishonest practice. I don't know if you remember, we had that one client at first didn't want us to be involved with the offer stage because they've been taken advantage of in the past by recruiters. Until finally, we show them that that's not the way we operate.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but if someone said because I understand, people can be money motivated, but without those big
people are money motivated. 100% they're money motivated. Right?
I know, but without the big fee structure, what would motivate someone to work?
So what motivates us is the is the renewal. We're looking for that monthly renewal. Our clients, we have to earn their business every month. So every month we have to perform and we have to produce for them and so forth. So it makes, like I said, it goes back to accountability, makes us more accountable. And then on top of that, by us having a flat placement fee, that removes that incentive structure of where we're not looking to jack up our fees or try to negotiate anything else like that.
The fee we charge is the fee. It's not getting, we're not writing.
So that allows us, if we need to go back to our clients and say, hey, we need to increase the offer, our clients can know that we are, an honest broker. That we're an honest broker. There's no incentive for us to get, more or less, we could be an honest broker and we can negotiate on behalf of both sides and make sure the deal gets done.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've covered that. We've covered how it's broken. We just covered how it's incentively broken, how financially it cannot make sense. Like, are there any other ways?
Yeah. Well, hold on. So before we move on, there was one other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
So financially, by when you have those placements, right? You're a hiring manager and you're responsible for your P&L, your profit and loss statement. And all of a sudden you have to make 2 or 3 hires in a month or a quarter.
Yeah.
It could totally blow up your P&L, right? You're all of a sudden you're paying 50 grand, 75 grand out to recruiter fees. And you might've had a great quarter, but now all of a sudden your P&L looks upside down.
Yeah.
So that's another big advantage of doing the subscription, because it kind of breaks these payments down over the year, rather than having those heavy, financial burden months. So in regards to other issues with recruiting, look, the whole model, like I said, because we talked about it being, transactional, it forces it to be reactive, right?
Yeah.
Clients will reach out to you when they have an opening. The seat's open. They need to fill it. There's a lot of pressure on them to fill it. They can't find the right candidate. So they're calling us at the last minute. Like, all right, the seat's already been opened. There's a cost of vacancy, which most people don't even talk about, like how much revenue is being lost because of, you're missing this person.
Yeah.
So then
a bad hire can cost more than, if you had 2 candidates, one was a little cheaper and you go with the cheaper one, but it's a bad hire, that's more expensive.
Oh, right. Well, that's the whole thing. So that, like you have this pressure to fill the role and you're rushed to fill it.
Yeah.
So then you make hiring mistakes. So our model being, subscription oriented, where we're working with our clients every month, month to month, we are more proactive. We're not being reactive once there's a seat open. We're being proactive. We're pipelining obviously we're focused on current needs. If there's any needs that need to be filled immediately, but we're also pipelining for future needs, anticipated needs. We could top grade talent. Like if there's someone that's they're okay, but if we could find someone better, so we've helped clients top grade. And then of course there's the opportunistic hires where when we come across great candidates that aren't even on the market yet, and nobody's aware that they're open. It's not like people broadcast, hey, I'm unhappy with my job.
Right? My boss sucks. I want a new job, right?
People
don't like putting that out there.
People tend not to broadcast that, right? So, but we know that, so we can reach out to our clients and be like, hey, just want to let you know that this, great candidate is out there. Do you want to talk to them? So, we make a number of placements like that every year, which really help our clients, grab talent before they even get on the market.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's a different approach than most people do. It's a proactive rather than a reactive approach.
Right.
I like that.
And you mentioned about the mistakes in hiring, right?
Yeah, they can be expensive.
Yeah, the cost of when you factor in the recruiting costs, not just external recruiting costs, but internal recruiting costs, your HR, talent acquisition team, hiring managers, all the interviewing, then you onboard, then you train them. Then there's negative experiences with clients. The team morale goes down. Then you fire them. And then there might be legal issues after that. When you count it all up, it could be, I've seen reports where it could even be 2 to 3 times the cost of the candidate's salary. So all of a sudden it's a huge cost. So viewing hiring as something that has to be done proactively, is a major thing. And it's funny to me because like people talk about that all the time. Hey, like what's your biggest challenge, right? Talk to companies about their biggest challenges that they face, and if it was efficiency, they'll spend money in software or update their warehouse or whatever they have to
get that new cutting edge piece of tech that will like shave 5 minutes off the production time or whatever, right? All in the same efficiency.
Yeah, but hiring and finding good help has always been the number one problem. Mm-hmm. And I always ask, companies, I'm like, what are you investing into fixing your biggest problem? It's finding the right people, the best people. The war on talent is just something that has to be invested into, and not enough people do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, I mean, speaking of challenges, right? Yes. Like you've shared some stories with me over the past, like my past year of working here. Like one of the challenges we face sometimes, like, not really, but something you've told me about previous experience. I'm sorry, Ellie, not set up just like in the past throughout, your travels and such, that, candidate ownership can be like a point of contention, can be a big challenge. Like, one, can you tell our listeners more about like how that can be an issue, especially in contingency recruiting?
Sure.
And how like we kind of solve that.
Okay. Sure. So candidate ownership, just to explain it really quickly, is when a recruiter submits a candidate and then the company's like, we already have this candidate. So they don't want to give the recruiter the credit for it. And the recruiter's like, well, hold on, I want credit for it. One of the things that I used to run into a lot was I would hear from, talent acquisition or HR, like, oh, we have them in our system. They're in our database already, or we're connected with them on LinkedIn, or we reached out to them on LinkedIn already. Sure. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, you got to give us credit for bringing them to the table, right? Yeah, like we have a big database. We reach out to people on LinkedIn all the time. Like that doesn't mean anything, until they're in process, so there would be this contention between, HR or talent acquisition and recruiters over ownership. And again, I fully understand.
No, I get it. Right?
Yeah. Bayley, can you imagine you had a list of candidates and then all of a sudden a recruiter submits someone and you got to go to your boss and be like, hey, we got to cut this check for 25 grand now because I didn't make that call in time. Like I understand, and that's the problem. Like that whole relationship becomes a little bit, competitive.
Yeah.
Even combative, right?
Yeah.
Versus collaborative, right? And that's what we try to do is we try to make it collaborative.
So that's how we eliminate the issue then. Instead of being combative, we're collaborative.
Well, the way we're collaborative is we don't have that high placement fee. There's right. So there's no concern. There's no fight over those large checks. We have clients that send us candidates that submit to, apply directly to them. They're like, hey, can you go screen this candidate for us?
And, make sure what kind of candidates we like. Make sure they're
right. Right. Because we become an extension of their team. Mm-hmm. We're part of their HR team, not a competitor to them. They know that there isn't that huge placement fee, so they can share the candidate, and they know that our value isn't necessarily finding candidates; it's landing them. Right. Yeah. So they want us part of the process, and like I said, it just works out so much.
And the only reason we can do that is because of the fee structure, right? So it all ties. Exactly. It always ties back into the fee structure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Look, the whole contingency fee structure leads to the candidate ownership issues. Yeah, it leads to the budget issues, right? It leads to them not wanting to, work with us proactively because, they're only certain searches get budgeted for recruiting fees and so forth like that. The incentive structure we talked about for the recruiter, so there's so many different, issues that are caused by this fee structure that kind of makes the entire contingency recruiting model, in my mind, totally broken.
Yeah. I get it.
And by the way, Bailey, every HR manager that I've ever talked to, any hiring manager, they've experienced at least one of them, if not all of these issues in the past, working with recruiters, right? So,
well, I mean, and that's why you get some people who are just like, say like, you know what, we don't even use recruiters. Like we're just going to go within network, like referrals from current workers, or, you know, just anything in network, like a first connection kind of thing.
Right.
Well, what do you say to those people, Leo, who like refuse to use recruiters for like reasons like that?
So I think they're missing out, you know.
How so?
Well, so
go deeper for me, please.
Look,
and our listeners.
You know, as we talked about at the very beginning, you know, like when someone tells me, hey, you know, I don't use recruiters, you know, all I'm doing is, you know, I don't use recruiters. I hire people I know. You know, I know everybody in the industry, and I hire people that I know. You know, first of all, what I hear from them is, all right, go ahead and send all the best candidates to my competitors instead, right? You know, that's what I'm hearing. It's like,
not interested.
I don't want to work with you. Just go ahead and send all those candidates to my competitors. That's fine. Yeah. But like you said, they're limiting themselves. You know, I feel I'm one of, you know, very well networked in this industry.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I would guess that 10%, 25% at the most, you know, as far as the percentage of people that I'm connected with or I know. And that means 75% of, you know, for a hiring manager who may know 10 to 25% of the industry, you know, that means that they're not reaching out to 75%, you know, like everyone's busy. Everyone's
working, trying to make money. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know who's available. You don't know who's unhappy in the current, you know, you don't know who is out there. And as we talked about earlier, you know, the war on talent, you know, or who's helping you fight that war on talent? You know, like there's other companies are using recruiters, right? Yeah. Other companies are doing full searches and reaching out. Like when we started,
companies just post like a job board, like
right. Well, we'll get to that. Hold on. Yeah. So when we start a search, like we're pretty thorough. We make a thorough list. We reach out to everybody, you know, not just the people we know. We reach out to the entire industry of candidates, right? Of anyone who could fit those criteria. So I always ask, you know, biggest question I ask those companies are like, who's helping you with your war on talent? You know, like who's helping you with your hunts, right? So to use our analogy, and companies who aren't investing into, as we talked about, their number one challenge, which is finding good people, you know, and then they're just, like I said, they're just missing out.
Yeah. I mean, they're not using recruiters, or they're just using, like I said earlier, they're just using job boards.
Right. And the job boards, you know, to me are probably the biggest waste of money, right? Because it's basically post and pray. You post a job, you post a job on a job board. You hope that the right candidate's going to see it. The right candidate's going to apply. Talk about reactive, right? You know, you post something and you're hoping and you're praying that something, you know, only about 30% of candidates on the market are actively on the market.
Yeah.
The other
70%.
Yeah. The other 70 are passive, right? You know, the others, they're passive. They're working. They're not looking for another job. Doesn't mean that they're not open for it.
No, sure. They're just not actively looking. Yeah.
You know, and that's what we do, you know, is we reach out to the active and passive candidates. And it's usually the candidates that are on the job market are usually on the job market for a reason. You know, of course, there's always some good ones, right? And there's a lot, and unfortunately, nowadays there's a lot of good people out there.
There's a lot of great talent out there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But most of the time, you know, the candidates that you really want to go after are passive, right? They're in their jobs, they're doing well. You know,
they're killing it. You want someone who's already killing it.
You want someone who's performing, you know, elsewhere, and that's what we do. You know, we reach out to the active and the passive candidates, and there's a lot of times that we're able to present, you know, the opportunities to the passive candidates and get them involved and interested in these opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at the clock here and to start getting to it. So real quick, Leo, this was great, but like for the listeners, just one more time, like we just went over like this whole thing. Let's like not dumb it down, but let's shorten it up for them real quick. So just to recap and summarize, like how does Birddog Talent like do the recruiting game different? Like how are we different?
Right. So again, you know, started Birddog Talent because thought the contingency recruiting model was broken, right? The whole industry is broken.
Yeah.
So what we did is we created, when I started Birddog Talent, I thought about all the issues that I saw in recruiting, right?
Yeah.
The expensive fee structure, the incentive structure for recruiters that's counterintuitive, the relationships, the transactional nature of these relationships, the reactive versus the reactive nature of these relationships. And so what I did is I thought about all of these issues and I eliminated all of them, right?
Okay.
With our model, we are affordable, budget friendly, proactive, collaborative, and really driven to be part of that team, not just to be
driven.
Yeah, right. And it's not to be cliche, but we're focused on the long-term relationship rather than the one time. I learned a long time ago that you're never going to get rich off one deal, right? But if you establish a reputation of trust and, then you can build a long-term career where people keep coming back to you and achieve long-term success.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's a great model. Obviously I believe in it enough to be here and then I'm excited to be a part of it,
Yeah. And look, I'm excited to have you be a part of it as well. You had a great first year. I'm looking forward to 2025 and a great year for you.
Thanks for the next one. Only the start.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, look, let's wrap it up. I think we've gone long enough.
I think so.
If the listeners have made it this far, thank you for listening.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, exactly. Hope that this was informative and enlightening. And if there's anything that you wanted to discuss further with us, please reach out to us. That's what we're doing this for, is to inform, listeners and then to continue the conversations, in real life, not in podcast world.
Sure.
In the coming weeks, we're going to be doing more episodes, hopefully a little bit more entertaining, right? But as we get better at this is episode 1, but the goal is
be gentle with this.
Right. Exactly. But we're hoping to, our goal is to be informative and entertaining, and we want to bring value to the AV industry, bring the knowledge, insights, share stories, that will hopefully better, the people in the AV industry. Episode number 2, which we will record, again, later this week. It's going to be about how to stand out as a candidate in this competitive job market. We know during this holiday season how hard it is to be out there.
Yeah.
And we want to, we want to be able to help candidates stand out and hopefully help them, get back into a great opportunity. So we're going to be sharing some highlights, insights and tips and tricks of how to stand out as a candidate. Look, we greatly appreciate everyone for joining us this week. And if you enjoyed it, please join us for the next episodes and click on the subscribe or like buttons.
Share it with your friends.
Right. Share it with your friends and colleagues. We definitely appreciate a 5-star rating. Right. And thank you again for joining us. Good luck with your hunts, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.